My parents skipped my engagement party to celebrate my brother's fake promotion. I was heartbroken, so I went silent. When my dad finally demanded answers, I handed him a letter from my late grandmother proving they stole my inheritance to fund my brother's failures. This is where the true unraveling of a lifetime of secrets begins, and trust me, you won't want to miss the fallout. Make sure you're subscribed to see it through to the end. We're always curious. Have you ever had a family member choose a sibling over you? Let us know in the comments. The florist was asking me a question about the centerpieces, something about the ratio of white hydrangeas to baby's breath, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. I was gripping the edge of the granite countertop in my kitchen so hard my knuckles had turned the color of old bone. "Riley, are you okay, honey? You look a little pale." I looked up. My fiancé, Leo, was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, holding his tie in one hand and a garment bag in the other. He looked handsome, hopeful, and painfully unaware that the ground had just opened up beneath my feet. "I'm fine," I lied, my voice sounding brittle and thin, like dry leaves skittering on pavement. "Just nerves. Big day." It was a big day. It was supposed to be the day. After 3 years of dating, 2 years of building my own landscape architecture firm from the ground up, and 29 years of trying to be the daughter my parents wanted, today was my engagement party. It wasn't just a party, it was a carefully curated olive branch. I had designed the venue myself, the solarium at the Botanical Gardens, specifically because I knew my mother, Abigail, loved orchids. I had ordered the catering from my father Andrew's favorite steakhouse, even though it cost double my budget. I had done everything right, but the phone in my hand, currently displaying a call duration of 4 minutes and 12 seconds, told a different story. Who was on the phone? Leo asked, stepping closer. He dropped the garment bag on a chair and reached for my shoulder. His hand was warm, grounding. Was it the caterer? Did they run out of the crab cakes? "No," I whispered. I felt a wave of nausea roll through me, a physical sickness that had nothing to do with the flu I had been fighting off all week and everything to do with the conversation I had just finished. It was my dad. Leo smiled, relief washing over his face. "Oh, good. Are they close? Andrew is notoriously terrible with GPS. Do I need to guide him in?" I shook my head, a short, jerky motion. I couldn't look Leo in the eye. If I looked at him, I would cry, and if I cried, I would ruin the makeup that I had spent an hour applying to hide the dark circles under my eyes. "They aren't coming, Leo." The silence in the kitchen was absolute. The hum of the refrigerator seemed to roar. "What do you mean?" Leo asked, his voice dropping an octave. "Riley, the party starts in 2 hours. People are already driving there. What do you mean they aren't coming?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and repeated the words my father had just said to me, the words that were currently burning a hole in my chest. "Todd got a promotion," I said, my voice trembling. "Dad said they can't make it to the engagement party because Todd called them an hour ago. He wants to celebrate tonight. He booked a table at Le Bernardin. They're going to dinner with him instead." Leo stared at me. "Wait, Todd, your brother Todd, the one who asked us for rent money 3 weeks ago." "Yes." "He got a promotion on a Saturday, and your parents are canceling coming to our engagement party, an event we've planned for months to go to dinner with him. On the same night." "Dad said it was a milestone moment for Todd," I said, quoting Andrew's dismissive tone perfectly. "He said, 'Riley, you know how hard Todd has struggled. We have to support him when he wins. You're engaged, that's great, but you're always doing well. Todd needs us right now. We'll send a gift.'" "We'll send a gift." The betrayal wasn't sharp, it was blunt and heavy, like being hit with a sandbag. I felt lightheaded. I had spent my entire life being the easy child, the one who didn't need help, the one who didn't get into trouble. And in return for my competence, I had been rendered invisible. "I have to go sit down," I murmured, pulling away from Leo's touch. My legs felt like jelly. "Riley, give me the phone," Leo said, his eyes flashing with a sudden, rare anger. "I'm calling Andrew back. This is unacceptable." "No," I snapped, the panic flaring instantly. "No, don't, please, I can't deal with the conflict right now. I just need to get through tonight. I walked past him into the living room and sank onto the sofa. The afternoon sun was streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. It was a beautiful day. It was perfect. And my parents had chosen, yet again, the chaotic spectacle of my brother over the steady, quiet success of their daughter. But as I sat there, listening to Leo pace in the kitchen, a new feeling began to creep in underneath the hurt. It was cold. It was hard. It was the feeling of a door closing in my mind. A heavy steel door that I had been propping open for 29 years. They think this is just another scheduling conflict, I whispered to the empty room. They think I'm going to cry for a day and then get over it. I looked down at my hands. They were shaking, but not from sadness anymore. The betrayal was worse than the diagnosis of indifference I had given them years ago. This was active. This was a choice. And for the first time in my life, I realized I had the power to make a choice too. The party was a blur of forced smiles and champagne that tasted like vinegar. The solarium was breathtaking, exactly as I had envisioned. Vines of jasmine climbed the trellis walls, filling the humid air with a sweet, intoxicating scent. Fairy lights were strung across the glass ceiling, creating a canopy of artificial stars as the sun began to set. My friends were there, Leo's family was there, his parents, sweet and confused, kept glancing at the empty seats at the head table, and my colleagues were there. Everyone showed up. Everyone except the 3 people who shared my DNA. Riley, the setting is gorgeous. My best friend Sarah gushed, grabbing my arm. She was wearing a deep emerald dress that I had helped her pick out. Seriously, you've outdone yourself. But hey, where are Abigail and Andrew? I haven't seen them yet. The question I had been dreading. I felt my stomach clench. Leo was standing a few feet away, talking to his brother, but I saw his shoulders stiffen. He was waiting to see how I would handle it. I took a sip of my sparkling water. I didn't trust myself with alcohol tonight and looked Sarah in the eye. They couldn't make it, I said. My voice was steady, surprisingly so. Something came up with Todd. Sarah's face fell. She knew the history. She knew everything. Todd, seriously, did he get arrested again? No, I said, a dry, humorless laugh escaping my lips. He got a promotion. Apparently, it required an emergency celebratory dinner. Tonight. Sarah's mouth dropped open. She looked around the room at the expensive floral arrangements, the live jazz band setting up in the corner, the 100 guests mingling. Are you joking? They skipped this for a dinner. Priorities, Sarah, I said, turning away to look at the empty table reserved for the family of the bride. Todd is the priority. I am the option. The night wore on. I danced with Leo. I cut the cake. I accepted toasts. But every time I looked at the entrance, a small, foolish part of me hoped to see my father's silver hair or my mother's stiff, perfectly coiffed bob. I hoped they would burst in, apologetic, breathless, telling me there had been a misunderstanding. They never came. Around 10:00 p.m., as the party was winding down and the jazz band was playing a slow, melancholic tune, my phone buzzed in my clutch. It was a text from my mother, Abigail. Hope the party is fun. We are so proud of Todd. He's finally turning a corner. We'll call you tomorrow. Love, Mom. Attached was a photo. It was a selfie taken at Le Bernardin. My mother was beaming, her pearls glowing in the candlelight. My father, Andrew, was raising a glass of red wine, looking flush and happy. And there in the middle was Todd. My brother Todd, 32 years old, wearing a suit that looked slightly too big for him, a smug, lopsided grin plastered on his face. He didn't look like a man who had just secured a life-changing promotion. He looked like a man who had successfully pulled off a con. I stared at the photo. I zoomed in on Todd's eyes. There was a glint there, a mixture of triumph and mockery. He knew what night it was. He knew exactly what he was taking from me. Riley. Leo was beside me again. He looked at the phone screen, then at my face. He didn't say anything. He just took my hand and squeezed it. I need to make a call, I said quietly. Now, it's late, Riley. Don't do it while you're angry. I'm not angry, Leo, I said, and it was the truth. The anger had evaporated, leaving behind something much colder and much more dangerous. I'm clarifying. I walked out of the solarium into the cool night air. The garden was silent, save for the chirping of crickets. I dialed my father's number. He answered on the second ring. The background noise was loud, clinking silverware, laughter. "Riley," Andrew shouted, sounding jovial and slightly tipsy. "We were just talking about you." Todd says hello. "Hi, Dad," I said. "I just got Mom's text. It looks like a lovely dinner." It is," Andrew boomed. "Listen, honey, I know you're disappointed we aren't there, but this promotion, Todd is going to be a regional manager. It's huge. We had to seize the moment." "I understand," I said. "It's very important to celebrate the things that matter." "Exactly. I knew you'd understand. You're always so reasonable, Riley." "I just wanted to tell you something, Dad," I said, looking up at the moon. "Since you're busy celebrating Todd's future, I thought I should clarify mine." "What do you mean?" The laughter in the background quieted slightly. "I mean," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that cut through the static, "I'm glad you're enjoying the dinner. But don't be surprised when you miss the wedding, too." There was a pause, a long, confused silence. "What? Riley, don't be dramatic. You're just emotional because—" "Goodbye, Dad." I hung up. I didn't block the number. Not yet. I wanted to see the missed calls pile up. I turned back toward the party, where the warm glow of the lights spilled out onto the grass. My parents thought they were dealing with the daughter they had raised, the compliant, quiet girl who begged for scraps of affection. But they had forgotten one crucial thing. They had forgotten that I was the one who cleared out Grandma Rose's attic after she died last year. They had forgotten that I was the only one who had taken the time to sort through every single box of her old papers. And most importantly, they had absolutely no idea about the small, velvet-lined box currently sitting on the top shelf of my closet, hidden behind a stack of winter sweaters. They thought they held all the power because they held the affection hostage. They didn't know I was holding the evidence. To understand why my parents staying home to eat steak with Todd was a declaration of war, you have to understand the ecosystem of the Holloway family. I was the landscape architect, the one who understood structure, foundations, and drainage. I knew that if you built a house on a swamp, it would eventually sink. My parents, Abigail and Andrew, had spent 30 years building their lives on the swamp of Todd's potential, and they had been using me as the sandbag to keep the water out. I was the good one, the easy one. When I was 18, I got into my dream university, a prestigious design school 3 states away. I vividly remember sitting at the kitchen table, the acceptance letter shaking in my hands, waiting for my parents to hug me. Instead, Abigail had sighed, taking off her reading glasses. "Riley, honey, that's wonderful, but the tuition, we just can't swing it right now." "But you promised," I had argued, fighting back tears. "You said there was a college fund." "The market took a hit," Andrew had said, refusing to look at me, focusing intently on his coffee. "And Todd, well, Todd's legal fees from that incident with the neighbor's car were more than we expected. We have to be fair, Riley. We can't bankrupt the family for your art school." So I didn't go. I went to a state school. I worked 3 jobs, barista, library clerk, landscaping crew, to pay my own way. I graduated with honors and 0 help from them. Meanwhile, Todd went to a private college that cost $50,000 a year. He dropped out after 3 semesters because the professors were out to get him. Andrew bought him a condo. Abigail paid for his car insurance. When Todd decided he wanted to be a DJ, they bought him equipment. When he wanted to flip houses, Andrew fronted him the cash. Every venture failed. Every time they cushioned his fall. And every time I achieved something, my first big contract, buying my own house, getting engaged to a man who actually respected me, it was met with a polite nod and a quick pivot back to Todd. "That's nice, Riley," Abigail would say. "But have you called your brother? He's having a hard time." Todd wasn't just a failure, he was a black hole. 2 days after the engagement party fiasco, I was in my office, trying to focus on a blueprint for a client's Japanese garden. My phone had been buzzing incessantly with texts from Abigail, ranging from, "Are you really mad?" to "You're being incredibly selfish." Then the door to my office opened. My assistant, a sweet girl named Jenna, looked apologetic. "Riley, your brother is here. He says it's urgent." I stiffened. Send him in. Todd strolled in a moment later. He looked exactly like he did in the photo, smug, polished, but with that underlying frantic energy of someone constantly looking for an exit. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car, likely paid for by the promotion bonus that probably didn't exist. "Hey, sis," Todd said, flopping onto the leather sofa in the corner of my office without asking. He didn't look at me, he looked around the room, eyeing my awards on the shelf. "Nice place. A little small, though. You should see the corner office I'm eyeing." "What do you want, Todd?" I asked, not looking up from my drafting table. "Mom and Dad are freaking out," he said, picking up a stress ball from my desk and tossing it in the air. "They said you threatened to uninvite them to the wedding. That's cold, Riley, even for you." "I didn't threaten," I said calmly. "I made a statement." "Look," Todd said, leaning forward, his voice dropping to that conspiratorial tone he used when he needed money. "The dinner was a big deal. I'm finally making moves. I'm going to be managing the entire tri-state sales division." "Sales division of what, Todd?" I asked. "The last I heard, you were selling solar panels door to door. Is that the division?" Todd's face flushed. "It's a multi-level marketing strategy, Riley. You wouldn't understand. It's high level." I stared at him. "Multi-level marketing. So, a pyramid scheme. You missed my engagement party to celebrate joining a pyramid scheme." "It's not a scheme." He snapped, then he composed himself, smoothing his tie. "Anyway, that's not why I'm here. I need a favor." "Of course. I need $5,000, Todd said, as casually as if he were asking for a stick of gum. "Just for a few weeks. There's a buy-in fee for the regional manager position. Dad's liquidity is a little tied up right now with the house renovations, and Mom is stress shopping because of you. I figured, since you're doing so well, you could help your brother out." I looked at him. I looked at the brother who had taken everything, my parents' attention, their resources, their pride, and now he wanted my money too. He sat there, entitled and relaxed, fully expecting me to cave because that's what the Holloways did. We propped up Todd. "No," I said. Todd blinked. "What?" "No," I repeated. "I'm not giving you money. I'm not lending you money. Get out of my office." Todd stood up, his face darkening. The charm evaporated, replaced by the nastiness that usually only came out after a few drinks. "You think you're better than us, don't you?" He sneered. "Just because you draw pretty gardens. You know, Mom and Dad are right about you. You're cold. You don't care about family." "I care about family, Todd," I said, standing up to meet his gaze. "That's why I'm not giving you a dime. Someone has to stop funding your delusions." "You'll regret this," Todd spat, heading for the door. "When I'm a millionaire, don't come crawling to me." "I won't," I said, "and Todd." He stopped at the door. "Tell Mom and Dad I said hello, and tell them to check their mail next week. I'm sending them a copy of something I think they'll find very interesting." Todd frowned, confused. "What?" "Just tell them," I said, and turned back to my work. He slammed the door so hard the framed degrees on my wall rattled. I waited until I was sure he was gone. Then I opened the bottom drawer of my desk, which was locked. I pulled out a photocopy of a handwritten letter, the ink faded but legible. "To my dearest grandchildren, Riley and Todd." I ran my finger over the date at the top. It was dated 10 years ago. Todd was the antagonist in the open, the loud, messy problem, but he wasn't the villain. He was just the monster my parents had built. The real villains were the ones who had stolen my future to pay for his present, and it was time they learned that debts, eventually, have to be paid. The anger that had propelled me through the engagement party and my brother's visit was slowly transforming into something quieter, more methodical. It wasn't rage anymore, it was strategy. As a landscape architect, I knew that you didn't just bulldoze a problem, you mapped it, understood its root system, and then you dug. The first step was confirming what I already knew in my gut. I sat at my drafting table late one evening, the only light coming from my desk lamp and the glow of my laptop screen. My office was silent, save for the rhythmic clicking of my mouse. I wasn't designing a garden, I was dismantling a lie. I had the letter from Grandma Rose. It was a photocopy, the original safely locked in a fireproof safe deposit box at my bank. The letter detailed a specific trust fund she had set up for Todd and me, $150,000 each, to be used for education, a first home, or a business venture. It was dated 10 years ago, right before I started college. But when I had asked about college money, my parents had claimed poverty. They said the market had crashed. They said Todd's legal fees had drained everything. I believed them because I was 18 and trusted my parents. I took out loans. I worked 3 jobs. I graduated with debt that still shadowed me, while Todd drove a series of leased sports cars and invested in failed ventures. I needed proof of where the money went. I called my cousin Mark. Mark was a forensic accountant, the kind of guy who found missing assets in messy divorces. We weren't close, but we were family, and he had always had a soft spot for Grandma Rose. "Riley," Mark answered on the second ring, sounding surprised. "Everything okay? I saw the engagement photos on Facebook. Congrats." "Thanks, Mark. I need a favor, a professional one. I'll pay your rate." "Whoa, okay, what's going on?" "I found a letter from Grandma Rose," I said, keeping my voice steady. "It mentions a trust fund, a specific account number at First National. I need to know if that account existed, and if it did, where the money went." There was a pause on the line. A trust fund. I thought Aunt Abigail said Grandma died with almost nothing. "That's what she said," I replied, "but I have a letter that says otherwise. Can you look into it?" "If you have the account number, I can do some digging. It might take a few days to trace the transactions if the account is closed, but yeah, I can find out." I gave him the number from the letter. 3 days later, Mark called me back. I was on a site visit, standing in a muddy backyard, discussing drainage with a contractor. I excused myself and walked to my car. "Riley," Mark said, his voice tight, "are you sitting down?" "I'm in my car," I said, my heart starting to pound. "Tell me." "The account existed," Mark said. "It was opened in 2012 with a deposit of $300,000. The beneficiaries were listed as Riley and Todd Holloway." "Okay," I breathed, "and?" "The money was withdrawn in a series of transactions over the next 4 years," Mark continued. "50,000 here, 20,000 there. All of it was transferred into a joint checking account held by Abigail and Andrew Holloway." "All of it?" I asked, feeling sick. "My half too." "Every cent, Riley. By the time you graduated college, the account was empty. And here's the kicker. I traced some of the outflows from their joint account during that same period. There were payments to a Prestige Auto Leasing, a tech startup Inc. That went defunct in 6 months, and a gambling debt settlement agency. I closed my eyes. They hadn't just prioritized Todd, they had stolen from me to fund him. They had watched me struggle, watched me work double shifts at a coffee shop while studying until 2 a.m., knowing full well that there was money specifically for me. Money they were pouring into Todd's black hole. "Thanks, Mark," I whispered. "Send me the documentation." "Riley, this is fraud. Serious fraud. You could sue them." "I know," I said, "but I'm not going to sue them yet. I'm going to give them a chance to explain." I hung up. The sadness was gone. In its place was a cold, hard resolve. I wasn't just the daughter they ignored anymore. I was the creditor they couldn't afford to ignore. The following Saturday, I drove to my parents' house. It was a sprawling, suburban colonial with perfectly manicured lawns I had designed for them as a graduation gift, ironically. I didn't call ahead. I knew they would be home. Saturdays were for family time, which usually meant Abigail cooking while Andrew and Todd watched sports. I walked up the driveway, my heels clicking on the pavement. I was carrying a large manila envelope. Inside was a copy of Grandma Rose's letter and the transaction history Mark had sent me. I rang the doorbell. Abigail answered, wiping her hands on an apron. Her face lit up with a brittle, anxious smile when she saw me. "Riley, oh honey, I'm so glad you came by. We were just talking about you. Come in, Todd is here." I stepped into the foyer. The smell of roast chicken filled the air. It was sickeningly domestic. I'm not staying for dinner, Mom, I said. Andrew and Todd appeared from the living room. Andrew had a beer in his hand. Todd looked wary, remembering our conversation in my office. Riley, Andrew said, his voice booming but cautious. Good to see you. Listen, about the engagement party, we know you were upset, but you have to understand. I understand perfectly, I interrupted, walking past him into the living room. I placed the manila envelope on the coffee table. That's why I'm here, to help you understand something. What's this? Todd asked, reaching for the envelope. Don't touch it, Todd, I said sharply. It's for Mom and Dad. Abigail frowned, looking between me and the envelope. Riley, what is going on? You're acting very strange. Open it, I said to my father. Andrew set down his beer and picked up the envelope. He opened it and pulled out the papers. I watched his face closely. He scanned the first page, Grandma Rose's letter. His expression didn't change much, just a flicker of annoyance. Then he flipped to the second page, the bank records. The color drained from his face instantly. He looked up at me, his eyes wide with genuine fear. Where did you get this? He whispered. Does it matter? I asked. Read the letter, Dad. Read the part about the education fund. Andrew, Abigail asked, stepping closer. What is it? Andrew didn't speak. He just handed the papers to her. Abigail read them, her hand flying to her mouth. This is private financial information, Andrew stammered, trying to regain some authority. You have no right to snoop through our accounts. Grandma Rose left that money for me and Todd, I said, my voice rising. She specifically said it was for our futures. You told me there was no money. You let me take out $60,000 in loans. You watched me work 3 jobs. And all the while, you were draining my inheritance to pay for Todd's, what? His car. His gambling debts. It wasn't like that. Abigail cried, finding her voice. We were a family. We were in a crisis. Todd needed help, and we borrowed it. We intended to pay it back. Borrowed it? I laughed, a harsh sound. It's been 10 years, Mom. Where is it? Where is my $150,000? We raised you, Andrew shouted, his face turning red. We put a roof over your head. We fed you. That money was ours to manage as we saw fit. You turned out fine, didn't you? You're successful. Todd needed a little more help. That's what families do. No, I said, stepping closer to them. That's what thieves do. You stole from me. You stole my start in life to enable him. I pointed at Todd, who was looking at the papers with a confused, slightly horrified expression. Even he hadn't known the extent of it. I didn't know it was your money, Todd mumbled. They just said they had it covered. Shut up, Todd, Andrew snapped. He turned back to me, his eyes narrowing. So what? You're going to sue your own parents, is that it, over money? It's not about the money anymore, I said. It's about the fact that you missed my engagement party to celebrate a scam and then lied to my face about why. It's about the fact that you have never, not once, put me first. We love you, Riley. Abigail sobbed. Please don't do this. Don't tear the family apart. I'm not tearing it apart, I said. I'm just showing you the cracks you made. I looked at them, my father defiant and cornered, my mother weeping but unrepentant, my brother finally realizing the cost of his safety net. I'm leaving, I said, and don't bother coming to the wedding. You're uninvited. You can't do that, Andrew yelled as I walked to the door. Think of what people will say. Think of the embarrassment. I am thinking of it, I said, opening the door, and honestly, I don't care. I walked out, leaving them in the silence of their own making, but as I drove away, I knew it wasn't over. Andrew Holloway was a man who cared about appearances above all else. He wouldn't let me walk away with his reputation in my pocket. He would strike back. The fallout was immediate and ugly. By Monday morning, my extended family's phone tree was lighting up. My Aunt Carol called me, hysterical. Riley, your mother is beside herself. She says you came over and screamed at them, demanding money. She says you're threatening to sue them because they helped Todd when he was sick. How could you be so cruel? Sick, I asked, my grip tightening on the phone. Is that what they told you, that Todd was sick? They said he had medical bills, and that you're jealous because they couldn't pay for your fancy college. They were spinning the narrative. Of course they were. They were painting me as the greedy, ungrateful daughter attacking her struggling parents and sick brother. It was a masterstroke of manipulation, but they had made a mistake. They had underestimated how much evidence I had gathered. I didn't argue with Aunt Carol. I simply said, "There are two sides to every story, Aunt Carol. I have proof of mine." I hung up and called Mark again. "It's worse than we thought," Mark said without preamble. I did a deeper dive into the Prestige Auto leasing payments. The company is owned by a guy named Vinny the Shark Morty. He's a loan shark, Riley. Your dad wasn't just paying for cars. He was paying off illegal gambling debts for Todd. Gambling, I repeated. So the medical bills were actually bookies. Exactly, and here's the other thing. I found a lien on your parents' house. They took out a second mortgage 3 years ago. The payments are 3 months behind. They're broke, Riley. That's why they were so desperate for you to not make a scene. They can't afford a lawsuit. They can't even afford a lawyer. The pieces fell into place. The desperation, the refusal to help me, the constant pressure on Todd to make it big with his schemes. They were drowning, and they had been using me as a life raft without me even knowing it. That evening, I came home to find Leo sitting at the kitchen table, looking grim. "Your dad called me," he said. "Of course he did," I sighed, dropping my keys. "What did he say?" "He said you're having a breakdown. He said the stress of the wedding is getting to you, and you're making up stories about stolen money. He wanted me to talk some sense into you. He even suggested we postpone the wedding until you're stable." I laughed, a harsh, incredulous sound. "He's trying to gaslight my fiancée now." "He tried," Leo said, standing up and wrapping his arms around me. "But I told him that I've seen the bank records, Andrew. And I told him that if he ever contacts me again to disparage you, I'll personally hand those records to the district attorney." I looked up at Leo, gratitude swelling in my chest. "You did that." "He's terrified, Riley," Leo said. "He knows you have him, but he's not going to stop. He's going to try to discredit you to everyone so that when the truth comes out, no one believes you." "Then I have to be faster," I said. "I have to end this." 2 days later, my phone rang. It was Todd. "Riley," he said, his voice surprisingly quiet. "What is it, Todd?" "Is it true?" he asked. "About the gambling. Dad told me he was investing in my businesses. But I saw the papers you left. The names, I recognized one of them. It was the guy I owed money to for the poker games back in college." "Yes, Todd," I said. "They paid off your debts with my money." "I didn't know," Todd said, his voice cracking. "I swear, Riley, I thought they just had money." "Well, now you know," I said. "And now you have a choice. You can keep playing the victim, or you can help me finish this." "How?" "There's a family reunion next weekend," I said. "Grandma Rose's memorial dinner. Everyone will be there. Aunt Carol, the cousins, everyone." "Yeah." "I'm going," I said. "And I'm going to tell the truth, not the version Dad is spinning. The real one with the receipts." "They'll kill you," Todd whispered. "No," I said. "They'll try to silence me, but they can't. Not if you back me up." There was a long silence on the line. Todd had spent his entire life being protected by them. He had never had to stand on his own 2 feet. "I can't," Todd said finally. "They're my parents, Riley. They did it for me." "They did it to cripple you, Todd." I snapped. "Don't you see? They made you dependent on them. They paid your way out of every mess so you'd never have to grow up, and they stole from me to do it." "I can't," he repeated and hung up. I stared at the phone. I was disappointed but not surprised. Todd was weak. That was the tragedy of it. But I wasn't. I spent the next week preparing. I made copies of the bank statements. I made copies of the emails from the loan shark that Mark had uncovered. I organized everything into a clear, undeniable timeline. The memorial dinner was at a local banquet hall. It was supposed to be a celebration of Grandma Rose's life. Andrew and Abigail would be there, playing the grieving, noble children. They would be expecting me to stay away, shamed into silence by their rumors. They were wrong. The banquet hall was humming with the low murmur of 50 relatives. Cousins I hadn't seen in years were balancing plates of lasagna. Aunts were comparing pictures of grandchildren, and at the head of the room, my parents held court. Andrew looked the part of the patriarch perfectly. He wore a crisp navy suit, a sorrowful but dignified expression on his face as he accepted condolences about Grandma Rose, who had been gone for a year but whose estate was finally, supposedly, settled. Abigail was beside him, dabbing at her eyes with a lace handkerchief, playing the devoted daughter-in-law. Todd was there too, sitting slightly apart from them, looking pale and jittery. He kept glancing at the door. I walked in. The room didn't go silent immediately. It was a ripple effect, first the cousins near the entrance, then the aunts, then the uncles. Within 30 seconds, the only sound was the clinking of silverware on china. I wasn't wearing black. I was wearing a tailored red dress, the color of a warning sign. I held a thick portfolio under my arm. Leo walked beside me, his hand on the small of my back, a silent anchor. "Riley," Aunt Carol said, her voice piercing the quiet. She stood up, looking flustered. We didn't think you were coming. After everything." "After everything," I repeated, my voice calm and carrying to the back of the room. "You mean after the lies my parents told you?" Andrew stood up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. His face went from benevolent patriarch to cornered animal in a heartbeat. "Riley," he boomed, trying to regain control. "This is a memorial for your grandmother. Have some respect. This isn't the time for your outbursts." "Actually, Dad," I said, walking toward the center of the room, "this is the perfect time. Because we're here to honor Grandma Rose, right? The woman who worked her entire life to leave something behind for her family." "Don't do this," Abigail hissed, standing up to join him. Her hands were shaking. "Please, Riley, not here." "Why not here, Mom?" I asked, stopping a few feet from their table. "Are you afraid Aunt Carol will find out about the college fund?" A murmur went through the room. "College fund?" Uncle Mike asked, frowning. "Rose didn't have a college fund. She died with debt." "That's what they told you," I said, opening my portfolio. I pulled out a stack of papers, the copies I had made. "But Grandma Rose left a trust, specifically for me and Todd, $300,000. I handed a copy of the bank statement to Uncle Mike. He looked at it, his eyes widening. This is a trust account," he said, looking up at Andrew. "In Rose's name, for the grandkids." "It was for emergencies," Andrew shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. "Family emergencies. We used it to keep the family afloat during the recession." "You used it to pay off Todd's gambling debts," I said, my voice rising over his. I pulled out the next document, the email from the loan shark, the transaction history to the offshore betting sites. "You used my half of the inheritance, money meant for my education, to cover illegal bets and failed business schemes for 10 years. The room erupted. "Gambling?" Aunt Carol gasped, looking at Todd. Todd shrank into his chair, looking like he wanted to disappear. "It's a lie." Abigail shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She's lying. She's jealous of her brother. She's always been jealous." "Am I asked. I turned to the room. "Does this look like jealousy?" I held up the letter from Grandma Rose, the one in her shaky, distinctive handwriting. "To my dearest Riley and Todd," I read aloud. "I hope this money gives you the freedom to pursue your dreams, whether it be school or a home of your own. Do not let anyone tell you that you cannot achieve greatness." I looked at my father. "She didn't leave it for you to fix your mistakes, Dad. She left it for us." Andrew stared at me. The bluster was gone. He looked old, tired, and defeated. The truth was out, and there was no spinning it. The whispers in the room had turned to angry muttering. Uncle Mike was looking at Andrew with disgusted disbelief. "You stole from your own daughter?" Uncle Mike asked, his voice low and dangerous. "Rose would be rolling in her grave." "We did what we had to do." Andrew yelled, his voice cracking. "Todd was in trouble. He was going to get hurt. These people, they don't mess around." "So you sacrificed me," I said quietly. "You let me drown in loans so you could bail him out, again and again." I turned to Todd. He was looking at the floor, tears streaming down his face. "Todd," I said, "tell them." He looked up, he looked at our parents, the people who had enabled him, protected him, and ultimately destroyed him. Then he looked at me. "She's right," Todd whispered. The room fell silent again to hear him. I had debts. Big ones. Dad said he handled it. I didn't know he took Riley's money. But I let him fix everything. He stood up, his chair clattering back. "I'm sorry, Riley," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm so sorry." He walked out of the banquet hall. He didn't look back at our parents. Abigail sobbed openly now, collapsing into her chair. Andrew stood there, isolated, the patriarch of nothing. "You should leave," Uncle Mike said to Andrew, his voice icy. "Before I call the police myself." Andrew looked around the room. He saw no allies, no sympathy, just judgment. He grabbed Abigail's arm and practically dragged her out the side door. The silence they left behind was heavy, but it wasn't oppressive. It was the silence of a storm finally breaking. The aftermath was swift and brutal, but in a way that felt strangely cleansing. My parents didn't go to jail. I decided not to press criminal charges, mostly for my own peace of mind, to avoid a drawn-out trial that would keep them in my life for years. But their social execution was total. Uncle Mike, who was the executor of Grandma's remaining estate, what little was left, launched a full audit. He uncovered more financial improprieties, loans taken out in other relatives' names, credit card fraud. The family cut them off completely. No more holiday dinners, no more sympathy, no more status. They were pariahs. They sold the big house to pay off the second mortgage and the lingering debts to the investors they had borrowed from. They moved into a small, rented condo in a neighboring town. I heard through the grapevine that Andrew was working part-time at a hardware store and Abigail had stopped going to her garden club. Todd surprised me. He didn't disappear. He checked himself into a rehabilitation program for gambling addiction. He used the last of his own money, not mine, not our parents', to pay for it. 6 months later, on the morning of my wedding, I received a letter. It wasn't from my parents. It was from Todd. "Riley, I know I'm not invited, and I respect that. I just wanted you to know that I'm 90 days sober. I got a job, a real one. I'm waiting tables. It's not glamorous, but it's honest. I'm setting up a payment plan. It will take me the rest of my life, probably, but I'm going to pay you back your half of the trust. Every cent. I know it doesn't fix the past, but I hope it's a start. You were the only one who told me the truth. Thank you, Todd." I cried when I read it, not tears of sadness, but relief. He was finally, painfully growing up. The wedding was perfect. We held it in the botanical gardens in the same solarium where the nightmare had begun. But this time, the air was different. It wasn't heavy with expectation or dread. It was light. My parents weren't there. There was no empty table for them. We simply didn't set places for ghosts. Uncle Mike walked me down the aisle. He squeezed my hand tight before letting go. "Your grandmother would be so proud of you, kiddo," he whispered. I looked at Leo waiting for me at the altar. He was smiling, that same warm, grounding smile that had anchored me through the storm. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who begged for scraps, who apologized for taking up space. She was gone. In her place was a woman who knew her worth, who had fought for her truth, and who had built a life on solid ground. As we exchanged vows, I looked out at the faces of the people who truly loved me, my friends, Leo's family, my cousins who had rallied around me. I realized that family isn't just blood. It's the people who show up. It's the people who choose you day after day without condition. My parents had made their choice. They chose the illusion. I chose reality. And standing there, with the sun filtering through the glass ceiling and the scent of jasmine in the air, reality was more beautiful than any dream they could have sold me.